We are at 5:30. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Careers in Economics. We're really excited for tonight's event because we have some excellent panelists to tell you all about what it's like to use a degree in economics in the world of work, some of the potential career paths that might come through a degree in economics, and to also just shed some light for those of you who might be considering econ as a potential major. So hopefully we're covering all our bases here, and we definitely will be welcoming questions. So please feel free to have this be a very interactive session. This event is part of our Work Like a Laker conference. We're in day 2, so March 8 through 18. So you haven't missed much. If you haven't attended any of our events yet for the conference, we have all of this week left and most of next week as well, with just so many professional development, other industry sessions, preparation sessions, to ultimately help you just feel ready for your future career and how to execute that. And it will end in our career fair, which is virtual again this semester on March 18. So let's jump in to just some of the meeting norms. I know we're all very used to Zoom at this point in the pandemic, coming up on a year. But for this meeting, for this event in particular, we would love for all our student attendees to turn your video on and keep it on. We chose to have a meeting instead of a webinar because we want this to be interactive and for you to feel like you can ask questions of our panelists and be engaged. But that being said, keep yourself muted, of course, except for when you are sharing something with us. As I said, questions are going to be wonderful. So feel free to put them in the chat. We will keep that open throughout and we'll try to address those throughout. There also is the little feature you can use where you raise your hand on the screen when you click the little 3 dots above your picture. You can raise your hand and then we'll be able to see that as well to call on you for a question. When you are speaking, it would be really helpful to our panelists and our faculty who are in attendance if you could introduce yourself as you're doing that. And then, of course, maintain eye contact, speak clearly, directly, just as you would when you were face-to-face with someone. And this event is being recorded, so you will be able to watch this back and share it with all of your friends as well. And that will be up on our Work Like a Laker conference website after the fact later this week. Okay, just a couple of other housekeeping items. We are going to be dropping in the chat that link right there, which we would really encourage you to click there. It'll be very, very easy to put in your name and email address. That'll be your check-in for this event, and you also will be entered to win a raffle prize. Who doesn't love free stuff? So it's a tech accessory package. You can see the little pictures there of some of the things that will be included, and a big thank you to our prize sponsor, Consolidated Electrical Distributors, for providing that for us. So great. All right. Before I turn it over to our moderators for today, just again wanted to reiterate from the Career Center, thank you so much for attending. This does not have to be your only interaction with a Career Center event. Attend the conference, attend the career fair, and then of course, every student has a career advisor at Grand Valley. So please come and see us in the Career Center as well. We are here to help. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Dalmia and Dr. Giedemann. So I believe Dr. Dalmia, you are up first.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I would like to start by thanking GVSU's Career Center and in particular Megan Brixton for their continued support. It's greatly appreciated. This is our 4th year hosting a Careers in Economics event, which we normally hold on campus in the forum with reps from several local employers. Due to the pandemic, we had to change the format this year. So we've invited 4 major employers of our students this evening. The individuals representing the companies are alums and are members of the Economic Advisory Board. They're all very generous with their time and extremely committed to our students' success. A big thank you to them for being here tonight. My sincere hope is that you will use the intimate setting of the event today to ask questions and benefit from the many years of experience they collectively bring to the table. So without further ado, I would now like to invite Professor Dan Giederman to start us this evening.
I will do that. Before I go into the presentation, I want to acknowledge there's a few other economics faculty members who are here right now. And so we have Daniel Montanera. He's brand new at Grand Valley, just started this year. I see Chris Cruz, who's there. He'll have to leave. He has to teach in a few minutes, but he just wanted to jump in. Kuhelika Day is here. Laudo Agura, Claudia Smith, and Jerry Simons, and I think that's the faculty members who are here. So one thing, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat, and if it's something related to classes or majoring or something like that, just put it in there. One of the professors might be able to jump in. But what I wanted to do before I got to our panelists is I just wanted to give a little bit of information just about majoring in economics. Talk a little bit about why you might consider majoring in economics, and then some thoughts to keep in mind as you're going through it. So the first thing, that you might be interested in is, can I get a job with a degree in economics, whether it's a BA or BS in economics or the BBA in economics? And the answer is yes, you can get jobs. This is an article from Forbes. You probably can't read the fine print there. It's actually from a few years ago, but the numbers really, the rankings really haven't changed in a way. We see that economics majors they do well when they're getting out. And this isn't something that students always know, because they often say, well, what can I do with an economics degree? I know what I'll do if I'm going to be an accountant. I know what I'm going to do if I maybe go into marketing, but I'm not clear what I will do if I will go into economics. And so I'll talk about that a little bit, why economics majors are in demand by employers. Real quickly though, this is some of the things that our recent graduates have done in their careers. They go into a lot of different areas. Economics, you often think about the financial sector, and we do. We have a lot of people who have gone into the financial sector. Actually, two of our panelists tonight work either at a bank or at a financial management company. So that's something that's really popular. We also have a lot, if we go over and look on the right side, a lot of people do, sort of analysis positions and research positions. And so we have other people tonight on the panel who will be from Steelcase and Meyer, and they, can give some sort of indication about, well, what can an economics major do for those companies? If we continue on the right, there's other professional positions that people go into. We have a lot of students who go on into law school. They became managers and things like that. And then finally, students go to grad school. We have students, we have a couple students who have got their degrees in public policy. We have other students who have gotten their PhDs in economics. You don't have to. And MBAs, I see one of our panelists actually has an MBA from Grand Valley. And so there's a lot of things that you do. Now but you see these things are kind of scattered. They're all sort of over the place. And so what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how can we position ourselves to get these jobs. Real quickly, those previous slide was what are our alums doing? This slide gives an indication of, well, what sort of companies do our graduates work for? And so we see, these are basically the top 20 employers of recent GVSU economics alums, and it's anywhere from Amazon to Wolverine Worldwide. And we see that Meyer obviously hires a lot of our graduates. Steelcase does as well. I think Mercantile Bank, they do a lot, so the financial sector does. Now, one thing I want you to notice, if we look at the scale on this, even a company like Meyer, they hire about 1.5% of our graduates have gone to work for Meyer. Okay. If we add up all of those 20 employers, it's less than 20% that have hired our graduates. So our graduates go all over the place. They do a lot of different things. Now, in one way that might be scary, like, wait a minute, I don't know for sure where I'm going to go get a job. I know if I go into accounting, I'm going to look for a job with the Big Four. That's a big place for me to get a job. But one thing about economics is you're not tied down to any particular career or any particular company. There's a lot of opportunities that you can use your interest in. Okay. So if you're interested in doing certain things, there are jobs available for you in that. And even if you go work for a nonprofit, nonprofits need to know economics. They need to know how to do their analysis. So there's a lot of things that you might be able to pursue with your degree. Now, something else that you might wonder about as well. Okay, but what about the pay? And these are some data that Paul Sicilian, he's an economics professor, he's one of our labor professors at Grand Valley. He put these slides together. He actually went and looked at the data for, I think, students and graduates in the upper Midwest region. Now, this includes all graduates, not just graduates from Grand Valley. So this would also include like graduates from University of Chicago and Northwestern and Michigan, as well as like Western and Central and Ferris. But I want you to kind of look at the comparison across majors. And we see that compared to marketing, economics does pretty well. Compared to management, economics does well. Compared to accounting, economics does well. And that might be surprising because I know at Grand Valley, our accounting students generally do quite well. And then we see, finance and economics similar. If we look at it a little bit further compared to, say, other liberal arts degrees, it might not be surprising that economics does better than some of the other ones, like psychology and history. And real quickly, I mean, people often knock, sort of the liberal arts degrees today here. Well, what are you going to do with a degree in history? Well, they get jobs. Let's be clear. They get jobs. But in terms of the remuneration that you might receive or, your wage, you're going to get it could be higher. Okay. And then this is just a little bit comparing to a few other things like computer science. That was the top ranked, where the students who are graduating got jobs the most on that first slide that I showed you. Compared to them, economics does well over the course of a lifetime. Same with engineering. And, if you kind of wonder, well, should I go into business economics or, get a BA or BS in economics? It doesn't really seem like it matters that much. So the one thing I want you to see is that there are jobs that are available and you can survive. You can have a nice life on the income that you would earn. Now, one thing I want to mention real quickly is one of the key things to think about when you are looking for a job in economics is, again, how do you market yourself? When you go look for job ads, you will find very, very few that say we're looking to hire an economist. Okay, at least not looking to hire an economist who has a bachelor's degree. You might see some that are trying to hire a PhD in economics, but that's not you, at least not yet. So how are you going to get a job? Well, I'll mention that, there are very few people out there who get a degree in history who are going to find a job as a historian. Or if you are majoring in English, okay, there aren't very many job openings that say, hey, we're trying to hire an English person. Okay, that's not, but how do those students get jobs and how will you get a job? Well, what you will do is you will look at the jobs that are out there and you say, well, what skill set are those employers looking for? Okay, how can I frame myself? So even if this job says we're looking to hire maybe a finance major, well, you have the same skills, or at least many of them that a finance major might have. You just need to sell yourself a little bit more and explain, okay, these are the analytic tools that I have. This is the knowledge set that I have. And then once you do that, the people we're hiring, hopefully, not always, they're not always going to recognize it. There's some software you're going to have to use the keywords to kind of get across. And this is where Megan and the Career Center can really help you market yourselves using the skill sets that you have. But that would be one thing to kind of keep in mind. All right, it's kind of a fun slide. Who are some, sort of famous economics majors? We see Ronald Reagan. He was president. Now, before he was president, he was an actor. Okay, but before that, he majored in economics. And we see Kamala Harris, now the vice president of the United States. I'll mention her dad is actually an economics professor. So if you want your child to grow up to be vice president, go get your PhD in economics and then become a professor. And we see Sandra Day O'Connor and a lot of different people that you wouldn't necessarily expect that would have degrees in economics. We see like Arnold Schwarzenegger, degree in economics and a governor and an actor. Tiger Woods, golfer. Golfer, and and so you have to make decisions and stuff like this. Fashion designers, rock stars. And then I have the last one, Ben Stein. You guys are probably, most of the students are too young to know who Ben Stein is. But if you ever watched the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Ben Stein is the teacher who's like, anybody. And so he actually got his degree in economics. That might be where he learned how to be boring. All right. So those are sort of some funny people that are economics majors, or maybe not just funny, but also famous and substantial people. What I'd like to do is that's a nice segue then into our panelists for the evening. These are also very well respected among our economics department people that have affiliations with ours. We have Jenny Beach, who's a graduate of Grand Valley from a couple years ago, working for Plant Moran. Bryson Jacques, who works at Steelcase, is also a member of our advisory board. Joel Eisenhart, who works at Meyer, or if you're a native of Michigan, he works at Myers. And then Kelsey Marshall, who works at Mercantile, and she's also a graduate of ours. So those are our panelists. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, give a very brief bio, talk about, maybe what you've done, how maybe has economics helped you. And you don't have to give full advice to students yet. We'll have some time later on, but just a little bit of your starting. And I guess I'll start alphabetically. I'll start with Jenny. So Jenny, could you please?
All right. Thank you. Yep. So I'm Jenny Beach. I graduated from Grand Valley in 2016 with a business economics major. I work at Plant Moran Financial Advisor, which is a wealth management practice. So I work with families and individuals maintaining and growing their wealth. And I know Professor Gideman talked about, we'll talk through advice and different things like that, but I really do attribute, getting the job interview and getting the job that I have to my economics degree. So there's definitely some really great things that the panel will talk through around marketing yourself and why an economics degree is huge.
I'll go with Joel Eisenhart next, please.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. I think this is my 4th year of doing this, but what a different year, right? Pretty crazy to imagine that going on almost a year exactly next week that I started working from home after working in our corporate offices here in Grand Rapids at Meyer, where I've been for the last 11 years, various backgrounds, but primarily, working in financial merchandise planning and replenishment, product flow related, crosses over supply chain, goes into many different areas, but we can talk more about that as you might have questions about Meyer. Prior to that, I had 18 years experience with kind of the new formed Sears and Kmart coming together with Sears Holdings. So total 29 years and it's gone by very quickly. And, I think I've got a lot of great feedback that I can share with you with what I see at Meyer. Who we recruit, who becomes our future leaders and how they've really progressed for my time, even though only 11 years, but seeing people grow very quickly as we've heavily recruited at Grand Valley. We have plenty of economics majors that have been hired on, not all specifically in my area, but certainly our company has many different options for people, and I'll share a little bit of that when I have the opportunity to. So other than that, just serving on the board has been an honor. It's been real fun getting to know all of you through either other functions like this, or I think we did the lunch and learn recently that I participated in. So, feel free to ask me whatever's on your mind. I've got hopefully something for everybody.
Bryson Jacques, please.
Yep. So I am also on the board as well. This is my 3rd year doing this event, I believe. So I do have my MBA from Grand Valley State. So actually I had Professor Dahlman and Professor Gideman as well. So good experience there. So I've got my undergrad is actually in finance, so I technically don't have a econ degree. However, a lot of what I've over my 16 years of experience through various roles, I've had a lot of my roles have heavily relied on economic principles. So much that that I was also able to confidently asked to see if I could teach econ at Grand Valley. So I've been doing that for the last 2 semesters, and that's been going really well. But my current experience, I'm a sales and operations planning process manager at Steelcase. I lead our supply side of our planning team. But I've also had my past roles in pricing and contracts, procurement, product development, and finance. I actually started working as a financial analyst for Ford Motor Company. So.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Kelsey Marshall.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Kelsey Marshall. I'm currently working at Mercantile Bank as a real estate valuation specialist. I graduated in 2019, so it feels like it was just yesterday, pretty much, compared to everyone else, and probably closer to all the students. But graduated with my BBA in business economics, and then immediately after that, I started at Mercantile in the commercial credit department. So as an analyst, as a credit analyst, which credit is a great stepping stone for anyone who's interested in banking or finance just in general. But I found that my, genuine interest was more focused on like a role that would be utilizing and working more with like market research and less on financial statements. So then in January, I was actually given the opportunity to transfer to the real estate team, which is where I'm at now. But outside of this role and like working, I'm a member as well of the Economics Advisory Board, and I'm also a mentor for the professional mentorship program with Seidman.
Thank you. One thing maybe the students noticed is we're going through the brief introductions is the job titles that our four panelists have. And I'm going to guess that most of you at least had never heard of at least one of those job titles before, which, I mean, and that's something too. There's jobs out there that you've never heard of. You have no idea what there's out. And actually, I'm certain that many of you are going to work at jobs that have titles that have not yet been created. Okay, over the course of the year, there's going to be jobs that pop up that are brand new, you've never heard of. And so one of the things you want to keep in mind a little bit is, how can I continue to use my skill set to prepare for those jobs that will get invented later on? And maybe you'll invent the job. Maybe you'll be like, wait a minute, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to give it my own title, and you're going to do this. Maybe you're going to start your own consulting firm somewhere along the line, or you're going to say, wait a minute, you need to hire me to do this for you. And, economics might be able to help you with that. And I'm not being facetious. I mean that quite sincerely, everything I just said. So what we're going to do now is I have a few questions, sort of introductory level questions for our panelists, and that might help you as individual students kind of get your thoughts on what questions might you want to ask of everyone as well. So I'm going to open up to the questions to any of our panelists. And the first one is, what useful skills do you think that economics majors can provide to employers?
And I can start out with this one. I really do think critical thinking skills. I mean, when you think about your economics courses, even at your basic 100 level courses, you're learning how to think, how to rationalize why things are happening, or if you thought it was going to happen one way, why did it go this other way? I mean, I know we're constantly asking ourselves during this pandemic, why are things happening differently than we would have anticipated or predicted or guessed? And that, when we talk about, applying for jobs or trying to highlight some of those, skills on a resume, the critical thinking is great for all employers. I've never seen an employer that says, I don't want someone who can critically think.
Yeah, Jenny, that's an excellent point, and one I was going to bring up specifically for Meyer. This pandemic has created new demands on our types of products that people were interested in during the outbreak of the pandemic, all the way through even today. Being able to predict and see big picture, being able to understand, will my bath tissue ever get back in stock? And now that we have it, what do we do with it? And so it's those crazy things that, pandemic, now we're looking around saying, okay, what are the things we need to stop doing? And what do we need to start doing more of? Because, we certainly were caught by surprise. Several companies in the United States were caught by surprise, not being able to anticipate nor deal with this type of demand that surged on PPE or just common commodities day to day. So having the critical thinking, but also wanting to ask why and ask that why, 5 times and continue to want to know more and crave that kind of that knowledge of, what's possible. So very great point, Jenny.
And just to build on that, critical thinking is super important. And also those analytical tool sets that you kind of gain as a econ major, and to bring that to the workplace, because I mean, most at Steelcase, we talk about being data-driven, a data-driven workplace. And just because so much of our decisions really comes through analyzing data and making critical decisions based on that information. And so being able to get that information and actually make sense of it and apply it to a real world situation is super valuable.
Kelsey, you want to add in anything?
Sure, yeah. I definitely think that the biggest thing, specifically if you're looking to go into, anything that's going to be banking or real estate specifically, I think that being able to research very well and just kind of self-motivate yourself to be able to continuously look into the different sources and verify data, because I feel like it's not that often that you would have to, like verify a bunch of data in school, because a lot of times you're given like a practice example and you just kind of take it for what it is. But in my current role, you have to constantly be double checking all of your sources, because there's not like one main source that you gather all your stuff from. So just being able to have that skill and to be able to like know what different sources there are out there for the public. So like public records and different data sources is, I think, a really good skill to have.
Thank you. Nick actually asked a question that was going to kind of tie in with what I was just going to talk about. So he asked, how do you signal to people that you're a critical thinker? Actually, and yeah, Professor Montanaro said, show them your econ degree. Actually, that was basically what I was going to say. One of the things that you can do, so if you think about different degrees, so, okay, in a couple of weeks, there's going to be March Madness. And some of you are going to be watching the basketball games, and they're going to be talking about, basketball players. And one of the things they'll do, they'll list their height, their weight, their year, and very often they might say what their major is going to be, okay? Your major sends a signal about you. Okay. So if you see somebody is majoring, it's a 6'9" strong forward, 220 pounds, majoring in nuclear physics, what do you think about that person? You probably think, wow, that person's really smart, as opposed to a 6'9" power forward weighing 220 pounds who has some other major that maybe we don't consider the best. And so economics, for good or for bad, has this reputation of being a rigorous discipline. Maybe that's bad when we're trying to attract freshmen. Hey, it's going to be a hard discipline, it's rigorous. But on the other hand, it is something that if you get your degree in economics, it sends a signal to employers that you have to be able to think logically about things. You wouldn't have survived if you couldn't think logically, if you couldn't, go 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps and put them in logical procession. They were able to, kind of figure out, well, what's good data and what are bad data, as Kelsey was talking about. So I think that's one of the things that actually is your degree can actually help signal. That's one of the things you can kind of sell yourself. Wait a minute. Okay. You're trying to hire this financial analyst position and you're looking for somebody for a finance major, but you're like, wait a minute. Okay. I've got my economics degree, which should help imply or signal that I'm a critical thinker. And that kind of leads me in. So Jordan, we'll get to some of your questions in a little bit real quickly. I just want to kind of continue. I see that the questions are coming up. And so we're not going to ignore them. I'm just going to go on and we'll get to your questions in a little bit with the chat. But because what I was just talking about was kind of the question, my next question I had on my list was, how should economics majors, how can they market themselves? Okay. How can they signal? This is one of the things that Nick was saying. How can I signal I'm a critical thinker? How can I signal that I'm somebody who's worth employing, that I'm going to be a productive worker? And so I'll ask our panelists, how can economics majors sell themselves? It's not something we often think about, but it's something really important.
I could take just my perspective with recruiting, and I had recently, up until recently, had the entire training program for all of our incoming entry level kind of retail corporate setting jobs. And as we looked for people in our interviews, it was about being able to really provide those examples that demonstrate why you're a critical thinker. And so some of this is just your interviewing strategy, but for someone who does it, it comes naturally to them, right? And I don't have to kind of piece together their kind of background and understand, are they really critical thinking or not with the examples they're giving me? And, they don't really complete the full circle, but I can really tell with someone who knows this is coming second, nature to them, and it's just what they do. And they're very fluent with being able to articulate all the different projects they worked on, or analytical projects that have produced outcomes, whether there was a result or not. What did they do to keep driving and digging to bring a conclusion forward? And so that's what I look for specifically, and I think that's what a lot of our recruiters will, that support this kind of process look for. So that's just my perspective from what I know with, coming through the hiring side of things, as a person that does the interviews as well as gets the feedback from the team members. And then once we hire them, obviously that's the result that we see.
And I'll even address Jordan's question a little closely. So I am a finance and economics major. So in wealth management, I would say a lot of people have finance degrees. And I will say in every interview that I had across firms, maybe the majority of candidates were finance majors, but they always wanted to talk about my economics degree. They wanted to talk about my economics classes because people are taking investments or, business finance courses, across the board. But with that economics degree, it was, okay, well, tell me about your favorite course. What kind of projects are you working on in economics? And I thought really, once I was doing the interview process, I didn't really think about it too much. But to Joel's point, when I was going through the recruiting side, when we were starting to look at other candidates, when we would ask people, what is your favorite class? About 90% of them would say, my investments class. That's what I like, because, that's frankly what we spend a lot of our time on, our investments. But it was those people who said, I really liked, my macroeconomics course, or I really loved even my real estate economics course. That might not be exactly what we're doing, but it was such a differentiator between the other candidates. So that is a phenomenal way to separate yourself and market yourself in an interview. And then I would really, from a resume perspective, make sure you're highlighting some of the different projects you're thinking about in your economics courses, papers, projects, big things that you're working on. Those are great things to indicate on a resume.
Thanks, Jenny. Before we get to Bryson and Kelsey, Jordan, I'll add on real quickly. I'm not going to tell you that you should switch your major from anything to one another. You're going to be able to get a job with your finance major for sure. One thing that is possible, relatively painless, maybe not painlessly, but with not over amounts of pain, is actually double majoring. Like Jenny said she did. She was a double major in finance and economics. So that might be something, Jordan, rather than switching your major completely, you might be able to talk with one of our advisors to see how easy would it be for me to also add on an economics major as well. Now, real quick, if it's going to take you like an extra semester to get that extra major, I wouldn't do it. The opportunity costs are too high, most likely. But it is something that might be possible depending upon where you are in your career. But I wouldn't tell you to switch from one major to another unless you really don't like whatever major you're in. So I'm sorry, I'll go back to Bryson and Kelsey. Maybe they could talk about how they might recommend students marketing themselves when they go to get a job.
Yeah. So for me, I guess my advice, it really depends on what kind of job you're looking for. Obviously, critical thinking skills is good in projects that you've been on. But if you're looking for a marketing position with an econ background, you really want to push the skills that are that you've developed with your econ degree that will help you in that role. So if it's going to be marketing, you're going to talk about how you can analyze the market, how you can be that market analyst and understand pricing and things like that. So because the econ kind of gives you a diverse tool set, you really just want to basically use those to kind of pick up on some of those tools that you've learned and really push those that kind of match with whatever job you're looking for.
Yeah, so I was just kind of going to say, I just got out of it. Seems like the whole process of finding a job, interviews, and talking to the employers, and it's really kind of stressful. So but I would definitely just say if there's any way you could like maybe connect your volunteer experience, your extracurricular organizations, things like that to that specific role, like whether you say like, oh, I volunteered at the Chamber of Commerce, the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, and I don't know, like helped them put together applications for their grant funding. Then you can, you know, tie that to banking and say that like, oh, you guys did PPP loans. So that's just like one very specific example. But if you tie your, somehow think of a way to tie it, your, you know, at involvement in organizations or your volunteer experience, if you tie that to that role or to that industry or to that company, that'd be a really good way for them to kind of, you know, for you to stand out in their brain.
And let me add something there as well. I mean, many of you are not going to have worked, you know, at getting grants for the Chamber of Commerce, and maybe you don't have extensive extracurricular activities, but you've done something. And this is one thing, Megan in the Career Center and her colleagues, they know how to help you take what you have done and put it into what Kelsey was just saying. Okay, this is what I've done. It maybe, I was a busboy when I was in college. Okay, how am I going to use busboy skills to get a job at a bank? I don't know how I do that, but Megan does. She knows how she could manipulate that somehow into something useful. So we have the resource there. So I just want to say, make sure you use the Career Center to kind of help you because you've done something. And Kelsey was able to effectively give it a great example of it. And that would be one that might be real easy to kind of turn into a way to market yourselves, but not all of you are going to have that ability given what you've already done. And so that's where the Career Center comes in and can help you kind of, tell your story. Okay. Tell your story of what you've done and what your outlook is and how you're going to be able to help these professions out and help these employers out. Okay. The next question I want to ask is just a little bit, if you did major in economics, how'd your major help you a little bit? Bryson said he majored in finance. So we and got an MBA. So maybe he could add something in there, but maybe any personal thing where you thought, hey, this is really where I put it. And I know Jenny and Kelsey have already talked about that a little bit, but anything more you'd like to add to that? Or Joel or Bryson, if you've seen somebody who has been hired who was, an economics major, how have they been able to use it in their careers? That might be another way to bring everyone in.
Yeah, I think a lot of our hires that we've had at Meijer have gone right into our advanced analytics department. Everything we're doing today is got analytics in the term. So, we're creating roles, just like Dan said, there's roles that didn't exist even 2 years ago. There's customer strategy roles now. There's creative innovation roles now that didn't exist. And it's because from our perspective, the customer is changing and they're changing in the way they expect to be able to, consume products and purchase products. So at Meijer, we're really focused on what's the next generation customer really going to look like? What are their demands? With millions of customers coming in a week, that's a lot of information that we can try to digest, from transactional standpoint, understand what's in the baskets, understand how to break that down into smaller pieces to then tell a bigger story about where the customer is behaving. So, today, we're trying to get our master data built up around lifestyle, diets, and behaviors, right? It'll help our website, it'll help our analytics and our category assortments in the stores. And so when you really look at the background of what I see with people coming out of school with this, is they're very quick to be able to pick that up and do well in it. Whereas we have to teach that to some people that might take 3 to 4 years, which just means they're 3 to 4 more years behind in their career development and aspirations of what they want to do next. So what I'd say is that I think you've got that advantage of being able to bring in the analytical skills and the strategic thinking that goes behind it, right? It's not just about pulling data. You got to do something with it. You got to present the data. You got to tell a story. You got to be able to kind of influence the organization around some things that are uncomfortable because, growing up in retail, you can very, very tangibly see, the things that happen at a store that drive a decision of purchase. But now that we're getting into this digital space and how people want to interact with the application for MPerks, how they want to interact with our website, They want it more personalized. Well, we don't know what personal means to Dan versus Bryson versus Kelsey and Jenny. And so we are trying to figure that out. And we need people with those kind of skills that really love kind of mining data and being able to kind of, you know, not to the degree where you got to produce your own data, but you're taking the data that's there, trying to make a story with it and really present it. And we see those, you know, students do really well, being able to not only do it well, but they enjoy it.
Jenny, you want to go?
Yes, I saw Bryson come off
Yeah,
mute
I-
as
I
well,
was-
so I didn't know who was racing to it. This was not prompted by Professor Giedemann, but I was just have a recent scenario where I took my comparative systems course at Grand Valley and really translated it into a lot of work that I do. So I did take that course at Grand Valley with Professor Giedemann during, you know, the previous election in 2016, learning about kind of not necessarily what side of the political aisle you are, but what are kind of themes and driving factors as it comes to full employment, you know, consumer spending, consumer welfare, and, you know, how does that play out? And again, regardless of who you support, there's going to be an outcome. And now how are decisions made? And then, you know, this wasn't talked about in my course, but now throw a pandemic on it. And what do things look like from an inflation standpoint? And, you know, I deal with, you know, families and individuals that don't have a finance or economics background, but they're trying to, you know, grow their wealth, manage their wealth for their families. And so taking these concepts that, you know, I learned in school that I've built in my career and explaining it to people who frankly don't understand or care, but want to understand the outcomes has been very, very helpful in my career. So I do give a plug to, you know, comparative systems. It was a great course. And so.
Before Bryson says something real quick, I thank you for saying that, because we got our student evaluations every year. You know, every semester you get your student evaluations. And I had one student remark about my comparative economic systems class this past semester. I got it in December. It said, "This was an interesting class, but I'm not paying money to take interesting classes. I'm paying money to take classes that are going to help me with my career." And so what I'd like for you to do is send me an email, Jenny, so I can work that in. It was just kind of one of those things. I was like, ouch. But so I'm glad that it actually helped you in your career. Okay. So Bryson, you want to kind of jump in a little bit?
Yeah. So actually, it's interesting because what Joel said, a lot of the econ majors that you're hiring, that Myers is hiring, is in their advanced analytics department. And that's actually a lot where I know where our econ majors are getting hired as well, in the advanced analytics department. And I will say I have worked with people that have had economics degrees in our advanced analytics department, and people that have just had more the data, computer science and things like that. And the people with economics degrees are the ones that are getting promoted. They're the ones that are moving up up the ladder here because their insights are much more valued. Because a lot of people can do the basic analytics, but to really understand how it applies and apply it to a real business case, that's where that economics degree comes in, and so it's super helpful. So I do see that at Steelcase for sure.
Kelsey?
Yeah, I don't know if mine's just very specific and I just got lucky that my degree matches perfectly with my current role, but like in the role that I do now, the fundamental principles of economics is like the basis of everything that I do. So since I'm focusing on and like I'm tasked with finding the value for a specific real estate property that the bank holds as collateral, then pretty much like one of the main ways that we do that is to determine the value would be to use what is called the sales comparison approach, which you look at recent sales of properties and you use the principle of substitution to basically say, if a buyer was looking at both of these properties, would they be able to substitute the comparable property for the subject property that I'm trying to value, and not like for the same want, desire, and utility of the building. And so just that basic thing is what I look at every single day, every single time I compare a property. to determine a value. And then after that, I just do some quick little adjustments, and that's how I get the value. And that's an entire assignment. So like my work every single day is based off of economic principles. So it's really interesting, and definitely has provided me with an excellent base for this role.
And just to add on a grocery example real quick, we analyze whether or not the customer is going to buy blueberry yogurt or strawberry, and do they care if there's 6 brands? Just for reference.
Yeah, so those elasticities that you're learning about in your classes, they actually matter quite a bit. So learn that formula. Real quick, so what I want to do now, we have a couple more questions, but if there is advice that the panelists might have for students at different levels. And so I think what I'll do is I'll start with, do you have any advice for freshmen and sophomores? If they're thinking about majoring in economics, or they've decided to major in economics, or are still thinking about what they might want to major in, just some broad, quick advice. And then we'll do the same thing for juniors, and then we'll finish it off with seniors. And I feel bad for the juniors and seniors. If you're going to hear some advice, you're like, wow, I wish I had known that 3 years ago. Well, you'll get some advice in a couple minutes, but anybody have any advice for the lower level students right now?
Yeah, I'll start it off in saying, you're never going to regret putting a lot of thought and planning into the classes that you hope to take in the next few years. I know, believe me, I fell into this trap early, but I know it's very important for a lot of people. I do not want to have Friday classes, or I will never do a 6 to 9. It's just not for me. Or I need to go on to rate my professor. I've got to have, the easy classes. I got to get through this. And I completely understand that, but I just want to make sure you're thinking through, looking through some of the course descriptions, especially if you don't know what you want to do, and saying, okay, that sounds interesting, or I think I would want to do this. Let me go through that process, or signing up for that class. And with that, make sure you're talking to your advisors to say, will I still graduate on time if these are the classes I want to take? So, what Professor Wiedemann said about, I wish I would have known this earlier. I mean, that's when I took some of my more intriguing economics electives was in, my junior, senior year. And I kind of said, what, I'm not going to pay attention to the class schedules. I know I want to take this course and this course, and then I fit my schedule around that. So if you think, economics is for you, or even if you think you're not sure, try to, tackle those earlier, and again, kind of disregard what you think. I don't want to have Friday classes. I don't want to get up early, and it'll pay dividends in the future. And I know 80% of you goes, Jenny, that's great. I'm not taking classes on Friday. I get that, but that's kind of my 2 cents of it.
Other thoughts? Bryson?
I guess my general thought is from an internship perspective. I know freshmen and sophomores usually don't look for internships. However, I really think that you can always try, and there are companies out there, and Megan is nodding her head, right? That there's companies out there that will hire freshmen and sophomore for interns. And I know at Steelcase, for instance, we actually love to hire in some groups, love to hire, especially like more sophomores. And what we'll do is we'll actually get that, if we really like that person, and I don't know about right now because of COVID and everything, but if we really like that person, we'll actually hire them year round, especially from Grand Valley, because they're close. And so you can work at Steelcase as part-time, and then still be a student too. So you're getting that business experience, that on the job experience, and those experiences really are going to help you understand what you actually really want to do with your career, because an internship is going to be a really good way to see how a particular career could really go, and better to do it sooner than later. So.
Yeah, I'll say that real quickly. I mean, I've had students who want to switch into maybe changing their majors because they've had an internship and they've realized they do not want to do that. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. So having an internship early on maybe it won't tell you exactly what you want to do with your life, but it might give you some really good indications about what you don't want to do with your life.
Exactly.
Yep. Kelsey, did you want to look like you were going to say something? Maybe.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, if you haven't already, fully built out your LinkedIn profile with like a nice professional photo, I definitely recommend doing that, because it's never too early just to, make it a priority to consistently network and build relationships and kind of maintain those as well. Because a lot of people always say like, oh, build your network, but you also need to maintain it. So you need to, like, if you're a freshman and you build a relationship in your freshman year or your sophomore year, if you just like, every once in a while check up on those responsive people that you connected with a while back, and you just keep checking in, that could really pay off in ways that you like really didn't even realize or intend them to. But just be honest and genuine, say, I have an interest in your industry, I have an interest in the role that you're currently at. And another way you could kind of figure out with like your whole like career exploration is, you could maybe, if you develop really good relationships that are, give and take on both sides of the relationship, then you can maybe ask them if you could go in for a shadow. Obviously, once COVID's not the main issue of the world, but that's a really good opportunity, is because it's a lot easier to ask somebody you've already had consistent communication with than to ask an employer you've never talked to before. So.
Thank you. And before I get to Joel, I just want to say something. Some of you might be saying, well, how can I network? You're actually doing it right now.
Right.
So I would imagine, suppose you're a freshman, in 2 years from now, you're like, I need to talk to somebody. You could reach out to any one of our panelists and say, I was in that session, that careers and economics session you gave back in 2021. And, and they'll be kind of happy that you remembered them and stuff like that. But this is kind of, maybe I would be happy if you guys remembered me. Maybe they wouldn't be, but there our alums and our members of our advisory board, they're really generally quite generous with their time. And that's one way to network. So you're just being here now, even though we're not able to talk in person, it's a way you can reach out later on and say, hey, I was there. I heard what you said and stuff like that. Could I ask you a few questions? And Joel, did you want to add something?
Well, I was just gonna say, I actually went through that experience, and before they had a thing called LinkedIn, people used to just show up at career fairs and just start talking about, what are you looking to hire for? What are the backgrounds? So I know it's an extra night of time as a freshman or sophomore that you're maybe not interested in spending, but you can learn a lot, and employers can really learn a lot, because I was, rarely impressed with a freshman that came to me last year and just asked if we were hiring for internships, and then finally said, well, I just want to let you know I'm a freshman. And I said, well, great, let's connect and stay connected, right? And let's see how your career progresses and what your interests are. And that's all it took. And then, of course, with LinkedIn now, he was able to, share that with me. And then I think I've had maybe 4 people from just the Lunch and Learn recently that, people connected with me. And while I may not be able to remember every single face that we Zoomed with, I certainly, I'm more connected to that group now, because they know that I presented, they know that I had some information they're interested in, and I'll easily, give them more focus and attention than someone that's just kind of randomly reaching out to me. So there's something to be said for that. So great point, Kelsey.
And Shireen has just posted the link to more information about the big career fair that GVSU is hosting in 9 days. So that might be another place you just go. You kind of jump in, and even if you're not directly looking for a job right now or immediately looking for one, you might have something to say. One thing, Professor Montanera actually said that he had some advice for freshmen and sophomores. And so if you want to share your advice, Stan, that'd be great. Appreciate it.
Okay. Now I have 2 pieces of advice, because what the others were saying jogged something in my memory. But I was going to say, there has been a lot of talk about internships, and they sound very structured, right? That there's an internship that I apply for and I get it. But don't forget about the value of just plain old volunteering. I'm a health economist, so most of my experience is counseling students who want to get into the healthcare sector, and sometimes they might be having trouble, getting that entry level job. Because there's a lot of applicants for these positions. So what's been successful for a lot of students, I just say, why don't you apply to volunteer there? Because it shows a few things. It shows you want to be part of it, even if you're not getting paid. it turns you into a person rather than just a piece of paper in that stack of applications. You're actually a person who's there at the workplace demonstrating your value to, could be, several mid-level managers. And I found in certain industries, and especially healthcare, if you can demonstrate your value to a mid-level manager, they tend to really go to bat for students once a job does open up. And having that foot in the door and having that recommendation internally can really advance a student's case, their candidacy for position. So even where these structured internships don't exist, or if you're having a hard time getting them, just try throwing your hat in the ring by volunteering. You can get a lot of the same benefits, the same experience for your resume, for your job interviews, even if it's not technically an internship.
Was there a second thing you wanted to say, Dan?
Yes, I don't want to take all the time. It was just advice for freshmen. I remember when I was in your place, I was taking econ and poli-sci courses, which are hard. And I decided, well, okay, I need to balance that out with a bird course so I can get good marks. And the course I heard about was called Geography of the Great Lakes. And I heard it was a bird course because one of the midterms was you had to color in a map, green for land and blue for water. And I thought I could do that. It ended up being my worst grade of the semester, not because I did bad job on the map. I colored in the map just fine, but it was, the rest of the course was so boring. I just could not bring myself to devote the same amount of attention to the bird course. So one of the panelists said earlier, take classes that interest you. Even from a strategic point of view, you can get much better grades in the courses you're actually interested in, no matter what you heard about other courses being super easy. They could be super boring at the same time.
So what I think I'll do is I was going to have separate questions for juniors and seniors, but I think what I'll do is I'll ask just in general, if you have advice for upper level students, what should they be doing if they're looking to get an internship, or if they're actually going to be on the job market right now, any specific advice about what they can be doing that maybe hasn't been brought up yet, or just to reiterate something that already has been mentioned.
Well, Kelsey mentioned the mentor program. Kelsey, you said you're a mentor right now. And so, and I was also a mentor, and I thought that was a really good way to, at least for my mentee, to really kind of to direct him and kind of help him figure out what his career path was going to be, because he ended up going into personal finance, which is something that that I'm not involved with, but at least it was something that that he had that chance to connect with somebody and to kind of work out what he really wanted to do. So, and he's been successful since. And actually, he just over a year later, he just gave me a call not too long ago, just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" So yeah, I definitely think that program would be a good thing to get into.
I agree. Yeah.
Dan, can I share details on the mentorship program that has been brought up a couple of times already?
Sure.
So the economics department, along with the management department, does this mentorship program. And I'm not sure if that program is going to be happening this year, but we generally around this time send out an email, and or maybe it's in early fall, we send out an email to students asking if they're interested in participating in the mentorship program. And the students have to fill out a questionnaire where we ask them of their career interests, so that we can match them with a person in the field that they're interested in pursuing after graduation. So I remember last year, I believe in fall 2019, we only had about 7 or 8 econ students who responded to the call out for the mentorship program. So please, this is a great way of networking and making connections. And a lot of our advisory board members and other professionals from the area are very much interested in serving as mentors and are very happy to give their time to students and continue this relationship even beyond the mentorship program, which is typically a year. So do consider that and keep an eye out for the invitation. Thanks, Dan.
Joel or Jenny, any advice for the upper level students?
I
Joel.
would just say remain persistent, right? I mean, this world right now is very hard to predict and plan, and even 5 weeks ago we didn't know as much as we know now, and so a lot of companies are trying to figure it out because the internship is a path for future employment, and so the employers don't want to miss out on being able to have these internships. They're just trying to figure out how to have a productive one that attracts you and then can retain you and possibly turn into a job offer. So I think there's still a lot of companies debating that right now that are going to have to make a decision here at some point. But as we know more information and as vaccines get out there, I think you'll see a lot more companies opening up that opportunity, and timing might be just perfect now as you start talking to people at career fairs, anyone that you connected with maybe in the fall. Just continue to follow up, and the worst thing they can do is say, no, we're not offering an internship or permanent employment at this time, or hey, when things open up in the summer, we might start opening up our permanent employment. I just think it's so unknown right now and undefined that persistence will pay off in this.
And I have 2 points to add. One, I think we touched on a little bit with, you can be doing this as a freshman, sophomore, or really junior, senior. Is this idea of, some people call it an informational interview or a reverse interview where, you make a connection. It can be any of the panelists. I mean, it can be anyone in your network of, hey, I just want to better understand what you do. Would you mind if we even did a mock interview? And that's been phenomenal. And so we've done a lot of recruiting that way, where we just have students reach out to us saying, hey, I know you've already filled this internship, but can we just kind of do an informational interview, and we'll call them out, kind of walk through questions. One, it gives you great practice with very little risk on just how interviews are structured, what kind of questions you might hear. And two, now you've just gotten your name out there again. So I would recommend, if you're thinking, hey, I'm thinking about this path, I don't necessarily know if an internship is right. I love the informational interview. The other thing I will say, when you do get an interview, make sure you're doing some pretty good research. And as economists, you'll understand that and I'll appreciate it. But doing some research of what you're interviewing for, and even as you're getting prepared for a career fair, what are some names that you want to do? What do they do exactly? And a lot of these firms and companies will have maybe a multitude of positions. And something that's really hard as a recruiter who says, okay, well, why do you want to work at Plant Moran? It's a great company. Well, what job are you applying for? And when I get, I'll do anything, I think a lot of students say, well, I'm just trying to be flexible. Just give me a job. If you would pay me, that would be great. And I totally get that, but it's great from a firm standpoint. I'm going in for this job at this location because this is what I want to spend my time doing. I know it can feel like, well, I'm not being flexible. What if they had a different opportunity? If they really like you and they've filled that position, they'll find a position for you. So I would really be encouraging students at any level, know what you're applying for, know what you're interviewing, and even career fairs, know what you want to talk about.
Thank you. One thing we're going to be doing in just a moment is hopefully asking students if they have any additional questions of anyone, things we haven't yet covered. But I want to reiterate 2 points that were just made. Joel mentioned the idea of persistence. This is going to be important when you're trying to get a job. Megan and I both know of, there was a student that we had a couple of years ago who I won't lie, the student frustrated both of us a little bit, because the student thought the jobs would be falling into that student's lap. And the student was good. Let's be clear. The student was a good student, but the jobs, unless you're lucky, they're just not going to fall into your lap. You're going to have to work at it. And so I wish I could tell you, hey, just go to the career fair. You're going to walk away with the job. 10 days from now, you're going to have your career all planned out. It's not going to happen that way. So you have to have that ability to just keep plugging at it. And if you get some disappointing news, okay, that's fine. But keep going through it. And then Jenny mentioned the idea of research. and she talked about researching the positions. One thing I would strongly encourage you all to do, and especially if you're going to go to the career fair in a few days, but also as you're just in general preparing for life, read the news, know what's going on in the world around you. The stimulus package or rescue plan, whatever they're calling it, that's probably going to be signed into law either today or tomorrow or in a couple of days or so. Have a general idea of what's in that, and not just information you got from some random person on Facebook. But just kind of read, kind of understand, if you're an economist, you should just kind of know, okay, what has the Federal Reserve been doing? I'm not saying you have to have a deep analysis of it, but just a general idea of things that are going on in the world. And you would be, and the reason I say this is because, again, you want to signal. Nick kind of asked, well, how do I signal I'm a critical thinker? Well, knowing that you know something around that's going on in the world, that you're aware of things and that you understand what's going on, that's another way you can signal. And you'd be shocked at how many of your peers don't do this. They have no real idea of what's going on in the world. They're like, well, I'm too busy with my other stuff. Well, you're not too busy to spend a half an hour, on your phone when you're waiting to do something. Just kind of read through, some of the headlines and some of the articles and go into it. So that'd be some advice that I would give you as a way that you can kind of say, hey, wait a minute, that person, they know what's going on in the world. And that is going to give a strong signal that you're one of those high types that employers would like to hire. Jenny?
One of the most common questions I've seen across interviews is, how do you stay up on current news? And a very common, I read the Wall Street Journal. And then the follow-up is, tell me about a recent article. So don't say, I read the Wall Street Journal every day if you do not, in fact, read the Wall Street Journal every day. And if that's the answer you're coming to, make sure you have something to back it up. I mean, I actually recently had an interview, how do you stay up on current news? Well, and he blatantly said, I follow Twitter pretty aggressively. I follow a lot of, politicians. Oh, great. Well, what have you recently read? And then he followed it up with this great analysis with different articles. And so I think a lot of the why you're doing things is important with staying up on current news as well.
Kelsey? Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of add just one small side note to that, because I think that's a really incredible tip that you should, like you mentioned, you should follow that throughout your career as well, not just when you're in the interview process. But I think if you're also targeting a specific industry or maybe even a specific company, then I would definitely look into if there was any recent news in any of those areas as well, because that's a really big, kind of like a talking point as well for you when you're trying to make connections. So.
Dan, can I add something else to the discussion? I've heard a lot about the courses that we should be taking, that are rigorous and help us with critical thinking, problem solving. I really appreciate that. But I would also like to add that college is also about extracurricular activities that oftentimes students do not take the time out to participate in. There are a lot of professional development opportunities that come via these extracurricular opportunities, like the TRACS program, the Econ Club programs, the lunch and learns that we are doing. This event today is a perfect example. Do invest time in attending such events because you really get great tips. The tips that Jenny just shared on the interview, how to be ready for an interview. If that's the only thing you take from today's event, I say your time investment was worth it. Because I can tell you from experience that once you've graduated, these professional development opportunities will not be free to you. You will have to actually pay to get training in such areas. So make the most of these opportunities, find time. There is a lot of value that you will take from attending such events.
Yep. So thank you, Sonia. For the students, do any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask of us? I know we've had a few in the chat, but anybody want anything specific or want us to touch a little bit more on?
I've got a quick one.
Yeah, Riley.
Yeah, so we touched a lot about how econ majors, how you might use it in a career. How do you guys, if you had to pick out maybe a couple skills that you're happy you learned that you didn't learn in your major, like what can we maybe do to start getting a head start on that? Something you learned that wasn't taught to you in college or in your major.
Oh, go ahead.
You want to go
Kelsey.
first? Okay.
No, go
I
ahead,
was just going to say, like the basic skill that I think is very essential for anyone in business, which you can spend endless amounts of time on it because it's just a really great thing. But Excel, the more you learn within Excel or just any Microsoft Office, is just going to do so much for you. And I feel like you don't really realize like how even just learning a few simple formula references, or you can get all the way up to, you know, like advanced Excel material, but a little pays off a long way in the day-to-day life of like just working. So.
And I can echo that to Kelsey. My husband is a pharmacist, so not in the business school. I mean, I can say this because I'm his wife. He's atrocious at Excel. And I think like he could not function in any sort of business career, really even outside of healthcare without any, like he's terrible with Excel. So I definitely agree with that. I did not learn it in college, but it was brought up to me at Grand Valley that paying attention to soft skills, so communication styles, listening, it is very important regardless of what your major is. In interviews, work, life, personal, you can tell when someone's not listening, even on Zoom. And so it's important to, you know, maintain eye contact. And some people are very naturally good at this, but there's very few people who are naturally. It's a practice across the board. So I would imagine any sort of resource, or if you know someone who's really good at that, kind of try to model things after them. But there's a ton of great books, as well as I'm sure the staff across Grand Valley can talk a little bit more about, you know, active listening, soft communication skills, filler words. I just said it, like, yeah, being slower with your talk and understanding what you're trying to say is better than talking for hours.
I see that Jacob Neifert has his hand up. And so Jacob, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. Great.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you guys all for your time. This is all extremely valuable information. I'm a sophomore here at Grand Valley, and I think I'm at the point where I've decided I'm going to study economics, but I was wondering if you guys had any advice for kind of looking into the different career areas that we've been talking about. And another thing is, are internships a good way to explore these different options?
Megan, do you maybe want to address that? I mean, I saw Bryson's hand, but maybe Megan could say something real quickly. Actually, let's go to Bryson because Megan's going to finish up talking a little bit later. So maybe, sorry, Bryson.
That's fine. I mean, what I would say is that actually econ it's a great, it's, as you know, Dan put up in the beginning, right? There's so many different opportunities for econ majors. And so it's really, the question is, where do you want to go with it, right? So because you have so many different opportunities with an econ major, so you really have to think about, well, what do I want to do with this? Because it really gives you so many options, I guess. So.
And I can jump in there. When we've talked a lot about networking and how important it is to make connections, the mentorship program, that is really a key to unlocking so many of those career paths. So if you were to talk to any of these panelists, they're all going to have a very different job history going back to high school and beyond. Maybe they did an internship, maybe they didn't. Maybe it was in something completely different. Maybe it was at a large company, maybe it was at a startup. So each of those people can unlock another kind of piece of that puzzle as you're kind of trying to figure out exactly what you want to do. And I know the point was also raised that it's really important to not just say, I'll do anything. So that being able to network and talk with people, talk with alums. LinkedIn is a great tool for doing that. I would love to chat with you about how to use LinkedIn to really get connected to some of our alumni who might not be quite as engaged as our lovely panelists today. But being able to do those informational interviews, really have that information that can help you start to make some decisions so that you can say, yep, I want to be a credit analyst when I graduate from Grand Valley. I know then that banking is the industry I want to stay in, and I can see myself in 10 years moving into whatever it is. So that's just really going to help, you know, and Professor Giedemann also mentioned telling your story. So you're telling your story, both what you've been through, but also where you see yourself going. And I can't emphasize enough that really connecting with people is the way to unlock that.
And really just to build on that, you know, attending events like these, you'll start to realize maybe there's certain things that you really like. I can almost guarantee there's not going to be a 100% match of like, yes, this is what I want to do, but you'll slowly kind of evaluate through your different classes, meeting different people, volunteering, talking to professors, internships, a whole gamut of, yes, I like this sliver, or this is really important to me, so I want to make sure I have this, or really, you know, I'm okay if I don't have this portion of things. So again, you're not going to get a perfect fit anywhere, but I think it's really important of what is important to you.
Thank you. Bradford Spelder has a question. Bradford, you want to go ahead and ask?
Sure. I just want to say thank you for everything. I'm seeing a lot of my favorite professors here, so it's great to see everyone. My question was, as a econ student who's done more of like the theory side of it, more everything, like I kind of want to do something involving finance and real estate. How would I be more prepared to enter that sort of field with the classes I've taken in economics?
So I could probably touch on some, but I don't know if maybe you guys still offer it. The department still offers the real estate. Yeah, there's like a concentration in the real estate, and I feel like if you're interested in real estate, that is like one of the key ways you can really stand out. And also, both times that I interviewed, but specifically when I interviewed for the real estate position, they asked me like, oh, were you involved in the econ club at Grand Valley because you went there? Or, oh, did you get the concentration in real estate? And I said, no, but I really, in that moment, I really, really wish I did. And I still do wish I did. So I would say those key things, and also maybe meet with your faculty advisor and see if they recommend anything specifically related to like certain courses, just because I don't really know all that's offered right now, but I would say that's a good place to start.
Bradford, are you graduating this semester?
Probably next semester, yeah.
Next semester. So Sonia, Dr. Dalmia, excuse me, might be able to say whether, I don't know if you've taken Eco 300, might be a class that would help you with some of the analytical skills. And then also our Eco Capstone, Eco 495, that actually brings in some of those analytical skills as well. So by the time you're finishing, even though if you are kind of less on the data side, you will have some ability to work with data when you're finished. So
Laudo, Professor Ogora, who teaches real estate, he's on Zoom. Maybe he can talk to you students about the emphasis in that area.
Yeah, sorry, I was eating, so I was a little bit out because I was too hungry. But yeah, so we have now a certificate in real estate, which is a shorter program than the emphasis. So that might be another option if you still have some room for taking classes or choosing classes. But if you don't, you know, in the analytics classes, we do use real estate data. So if you're interested, you can talk with the instructors to perhaps you know, do more work on the with that type of data to learn more about it. That's another option if you don't have much more time to take additional classes. But contact me if you have more questions. I'm the coordinator for the real estate programs.
Yeah, and all of our emails are available on the website. So that would be an easy way to contact us. And Lori Staggs is also with the Career Center. She just put in some information on how you might be able to use Handshake to your benefit.
Shameless plug. Yeah.
No, great. No, you guys do a lot of great stuff. Maria Rush has a question. And then I'll get to Jason after Maria's question, please.
I had a question on the mentorship program. Is that mainly, do you wait till you're like a junior or senior, or is it available for multiple years, or how does that work?
Usually juniors, because we are a secondary admit program. So by the time you've declared your major, you've had 55 credits already. So it's generally at that time. But if you, as a sophomore, you know you want to pursue the major, feel free to contact me directly and I would be happy to put you in the pool.
Okay. All right, great. I'm going to go to Jason Smith, and then after Jason Smith, I'll go to Jake Taylor with the question. So Jason, please.
All right, thank you. This is for more of the econ faculty, but for freshmen who are maybe deciding on a major, how would you explain the different programs that we offer? Because I know that you can get a BBA in economics and then a BS. And I remember being very confused about that when I was a freshman.
Yeah, it is confusing a little bit. The general idea is that so there's the Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts, and that kind of depends on whether you would take a foreign language or not. And then we have this thing called the Bachelors of Business Administration. The main difference between the BABS versus the BBA is that if you get the BBA, which is in the business college, the business degree, you have to take sort of the core curriculum from the business college. So you would be taking classes in accounting, classes in marketing, classes in finance, classes in management, and many of those classes. And so you would have all these different classes specifically in business, and then you would have your emphasis in economics. If you just major in economics, that frees up a bunch of other electives for you to take in other disciplines. You can still take like finance classes or a marketing class if you want, but you don't have to take the core classes. So that's the primary difference between the two types of degrees. We could spend a little bit more time going through it, but it's just generally whether you're going to be taking that entire business core as a requirement, or whether you're going to be just kind of focusing on your economics and then what other outside classes you might want to take. So you have a little bit more. So you have a little bit more freedom with course choice if you just go the BABS route, but you would be able to have more of the business specific stuff if you went the BBA route. Okay. Yep. So. Okay, I see we're now got a few more questions, but let me get real quickly to Jake, and then I'll go to Alina, and then to Charlie. So Jake Taylor?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, not only you four, but also any of the other faculty members that are here today, if you were to go back to when you were maybe a sophomore or junior in college, what would you possibly do differently than you did at the time to set yourself apart from the competition that all of us are facing right now in order to either get a job or just to make yourself a better person in general as to market yourself?
I think that might be best left to our panelists because for the professors, I think our job paths have been quite a bit different than most of yours. So I think our panelists might be able to better answer that question.
And this probably does feel like a shameless plug, but it really is a genuine answer. I wish I would have gotten more involved in the econ club and maybe taken a more leadership role in that. I think I would have really enjoyed that. I think I was very hung up on, I don't have time to do that. And so I would attend a meeting here and there. And I think if I would have been, no, this is something I would really enjoy. And I think it would help my career and my learning, that's what I would have done. And really that goes for, whatever you're interested in. So it doesn't have to be econ club. I think for me, that worked. But if you're interested and passionate about something, I would get involved and try to take a leadership role if you can.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I would say that's 100% the thing that I wish I would have done too, is either the econ club or just find a volunteering organization or a different organization at the school that you can just really kind of make your second priority to, you know, your actual coursework. I think that, because like Jenny said, I really just kind of said, oh, I don't have time. I gotta, you know, get the best grades that I can. You have a high GPA, but it's like, what do you want to get out of your degree in 4 years? Do you want to just have a GPA to show for it, or do you want to have, you know, connections? Do you want to have more insight on what you actually want to do with your career, which is something that the Econ Club can definitely help you determine. And so I think that that's probably the best piece of advice would be to, you know, join the Econ Club.
Bryson or Joel, any?
You know, kind of similar, not necessarily a specific Econ Club. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, because you should, but to really just kind of research and understand what you really want to do with your degree. You know, for me, I'll be honest, when I was going to college, I decided, yeah, I like numbers and I like people. I'll just finance major, sure, why not, right? And I kind of, you know, I went through school and then I applied for jobs that said finance major, right? I mean, that was kind of my, I wasn't very organized as far as that goes, right? And I really wish that I really would have done a better job at really understanding the different real career paths that I could have, and the different industries and everything like that. I'm not disappointed with how things worked out for myself, but at the same time, I wish I would have been a little bit more deliberate in what I was going into.
Real quickly, I see the time and it's getting close to 7 o'clock, which we said would be the official end. I'm planning on staying around and answering questions as long as students still have questions. I know that some of our panelists and other faculty members might have to leave. They might have a time constraint, but I'll stick around to make sure that I can at least do what I can to answer what questions you might have. So let me jump to Alina's question right now.
I know that clubs were mentioned, but is there anything else that gives your resume more of an advantage, such as a language?
Anybody want to take that one?
Did you say such as a language? Is that what you said?
Yeah, or starting a club even.
Yeah, I can talk about that. I mean, for any company, you're gonna get tons of resumes. So even if you take if they were all Grand Valley and they all kind of have similar courses, maybe similar GPAs, anything that is unique to you. So different jobs that you might have had, it feels sometimes like, well, maybe this isn't applicable, but like, you know, I worked at the Qdoba on campus and I didn't have a ton of work experience outside of that. And so I put that on there. So, I mean, that's something else of, you know, people like to eat at Qdoba, but they also want to talk about, you know, what did you do? Different languages, definitely. You know, study abroad programs, you're starting to get more and more people who do study abroad, but there's still that talk to me about your study abroad program. I mean, in interviews, yes, what your course load and your GPA is important, but they're going to want to talk about what makes you you. Why should we hire you versus someone else? So, and I think Megan can talk a little bit about that from a career services center of different resume things that are great to put on, but just really be yourself. And she probably, Megan has some better language to communicate that on a resume.
And Alina, if I may add to what Jenny said with respect to study abroad, usually students tend to gravitate towards countries that they are more comfortable going to. I say get out of your comfort zone and go explore parts of the world that you would not otherwise make use of this opportunity. That would be a great learning experience.
Joel, it looked like you were going to say something.
I just think they're all great points. I think, you know, the more diversity we can see in the resumes and the different backgrounds, that's what really draws our attention out to initially at least get, you know, some preliminary reviews down, but it's really about the story you're going to tell us, right? And how that all those experiences play into your persona as you, and then how does it apply, and why does that skill set allow you to be effective at what you do? And Kelsey made a really good point too that I wanted to reflect on, was that it isn't just about grade point. And I see so many people worried about their grades and only having that on their resume, but then they can't speak to me about what did they really learn, what was the journey they went on, how did they grow as a person? And that's what I'm looking for. And I don't think I'm unique in that perspective from a recruiting standpoint.
I think I'm going to go to Charlie's question. And then after we go through Charlie's question, I think Megan has a few concluding remarks. And again, I'll stick around as if people have additional questions after that. But Charlie, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. My name's Charlie Crossley, and I'm currently a supply chain management major, and I'm also working at Amazon. I recently, or during the peak season, during the holidays, I got promoted to process assistant, which was really exciting. But I was wondering, like, I want to go into like more of like a big picture role where you're thinking about the whole company and like how like different like decisions will impact everything. Do you think adding the business econ to my supply chain management would be helpful?
I do. I really think it will help. I can't promise it's going to help, but I think it does. I think you've heard a little bit from the panelists tonight that it gives you sort of a broader view, sort of this overarching view that can help you as you go through your career. So if you're able to work, now again, I wouldn't spend an extra semester in college to add it, but if you're able to fit it in with what you're doing now, I would certainly encourage you to do so.
Charlie, the other thing I would say is look at the profile of a particular job that perhaps you are interested in graduating into, and see what kind of skill sets are required to perform that job, and then see how you can acquire those skill sets in the remaining time that you have in college. And it may not be by picking up another major, but at least filling up your electives with courses that help you get those skills.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to thank all of our panelists for giving their time this evening to provide advice to students, actually provide advice to the faculty members as well. I'd also like to thank Lori Staggs and Megan Rickson from the Career Center for joining us tonight, and the other faculty members to try to help you out. And we're here all the time. I mean, this was a nice event to have, but if you want to reach out to any of us at any time in the future, we're here to help you. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Megan. She might have some concluding remarks, but again, I'll stick around if anybody has any extra questions they'd like to ask afterwards. So Megan, please conclude.
Great, I can conclude, and thank you. This was really, really helpful. I always learn something when I get to hear from our great alums and employer partners and all of our faculty. So hopefully all of you students felt that as well. Take a look at the Work Like a Laker conference. You can see we have virtual practice interviews. So if you're feeling a little bit anxious about interviewing, that's also a great tool to get prepared for our career fair that's coming up next week. Try to think like, what are the couple of nuggets that you're going to take right from this conversation and put them into action. We're always talking about your short and long-term career plans in the Career Center. So what are some short-term things you can do in the next week, in the next month, in this semester to move forward, but also how can we start, really thinking forward into what it's going to be like the rest of your time at Grand Valley and beyond. And of course, we are in the Career Center very, very willing to help you kind of start to plan that out and see what that really looks like. So thank you again. And anything else from any of our panelists or faculty before we end today?
Joel?
No, thank you for having us.
Okay. Great. Then thank you, students. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jason, you still have your hand up. Did your question get answered or?
Oh, I did not realize my hand was still up. I thought
Okay.
that it would go down by itself. I've never used that feature in Zoom before,
Oh,
actually.
Yeah, no,
Oops.
you have to put it down. So. Well, thank you, Megan, again, and thanks, Dan. And it was good to see you all. And thank you, Jenna and Bryson. I'm going to take off. Have a good night, everyone.
I'm still here, and I think Maria has a question. So
Yep,
I've known you.
I'm happy to answer any as well if needed.
Maria?
I was just curious with the Career Center. I'm a freshman and I'm still exploring what career I'd like to do. Is that something the Career Center helps with? Like, do you discuss different options that I could?
We definitely do. So we have career counselors in our office who very much focus on that. So if you wanted to really take a broad look at what could I do in a really general sense, you know, we have some career assessments. We have a free tool called Pathway U. You can go ahead and just look that up on our website right now and take that this evening, and it will start making some connections to career paths that might be a good fit for you. But you also could take the approach of just making appointments with a career advisor who works with specific areas. So I work with the College of Business. If you want to talk a little bit more about majors within business, econ, or others, I'm your gal. Or just reach out to me and I'll tell you the career advisor for any of the other areas. That's also on our website. You can also access that through Handshake. So either way, if you want to kind of do the full exploration thing, great. Or if you want to dig into a couple of specifics because you already have narrowed it down, we can help with that too.
Okay, and are the contacts, where could I find like the contacts from tonight's? Is there a specific spot where all your emails are, or?
You mean the panelists?
Yeah.
I tell you what, I'll put my email in the chat for all of you. And then if you guys just want to, and you probably got an email from me, you probably got 2 emails from me already.
And from me, I think I send one too to you guys.
So that's my email. Yeah, that's right. So if you just want to send me that, I can put you in contact with anybody that you like to be in contact with, Maria.
Perfect. Thank you.
I've actually got a question for you, Jenny.
Okay.
I'm really interested in going into financial advising, and I came from a psychology degree. Because I liked talking with people and stuff, but then I realized I didn't like the clinical side of psychology, and I actually really liked financial markets and such. And I'm actually in Dan's class right now on money and banking, and I'm enjoying that. I was wondering if you had any like advice for somebody who's relatively new to this side of the industry breaking in.
Definitely. Well, first, anytime you can highlight that, hey, I had an interest in psychology. I mean, we say that all the time, that really we in personal finance, we do a lot of psychology because it's family dynamics, behavioral finance, and things like that. There's some great books out there. But if reading books really isn't your thing, there's a ton of, documentaries, short articles and things like that. For me specifically, like Plant Moran, we do a lot of our hiring and interviews for internships very early. So it's never too early to approach that. I would say if you like never having the same day twice, financial advising is a great fit. I mean, I can't tell you what I'm going to do tomorrow. A client could call me and say they're buying a boat, or they're selling their house, or hey, I want to buy GameStop, or hey, I don't want to touch anything with GameStop. I mean, so it's all about being flexible. And so that's why I do attribute a lot of the skills I have learned to my economics degree, because it does teach you to be flexible. I mean, we talk a lot about here are kind of the theories and rules, but the world doesn't work like that. And so I think, again, attending things like this are phenomenal. I'd be happy to even talk one-on-one more if you want to
I would love that.
dive into that. I love that. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then kind of through my informational interviews found financial advising. It's a great fit for a lot of people. It's not a great fit for others. So there's great economics and finance courses at Grand Valley that you can help structure, personal financial planning or just general financial planning.
Gotcha. are there any roles that maybe, because I'm having trouble right now finding actual like financial planning internships. Are there any like sort of job experiences I could gain that would look like, or at least lead me in the right direction?
Megan might be able to answer that question probably better than Jenny would. Not to say
Definitely.
Jenny can't answer that question, but I think Megan would be the direct contact person for maybe putting you in contact with those potential internships.
Sweet.
Absolutely. I mean, there are financial advisory internships for sure, but often that is a field that
Meeting face to face.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
meeting face to face, but doing some good informational interviews and just making some connections might allow you to gain that information. And then you pair that with an internship that isn't necessarily hyper focused on that area, but gets you a lot of skills and working, within an organizational structure, and just seeing what that's like paired with those informational interviews can be really, really helpful.
Great.
And yeah, happy to chat further about that too.
Okay, I'll probably reach out.
Great.
Any final questions from the students?
No, that was great.
And I really appreciate, all the student participation. I know it can be really daunting to come off mute and ask a question in front of a big panel, professors, your peers. So I give you guys all a lot of credit. That's wonderful.
No, thanks. Thanks for taking the time out of your days to talk to us, though. We needed it a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course.
Have a good evening.
You too,
Bryson,
thanks.
Jenny, Megan,
Bye.
thank you so much. Dan, thanks too.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna end the Zoom. All right.
Megan, thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.